Well, hello there. I'm Colt Skinner, and I want to show you a nightmare. Like me, you must wonder about the strangers you pass on the street every day. How many do you think suffer from savage fantasies? Which ones lust over violent delights? Come with me, friends, and together we'll see how dark our desires can be and figure out who the monsters really are. This is Your English is Good. Her skin draws my attention lower, to the place where her luxurious robe parts and her thighs penetrate the room's humid air. I simply cannot understand how her flesh can be made of cream and silk and caramel all at the same time. I smell her too, even though I'm on the other side of the room. Jasmine and spice and the glistening sweet musk that only comes from a really good workout. She is all pheromones and flowers and lambskin smooth, and the last time my heart pounded against my chest like this, I was 15 and alone with a naked girl for the first time. "So, Paulo sent you," she says through deep purple lips and a dry smirk. I can't place her accent. Maybe it's South Asian, like Vietnamese or Thai. Gujarati, Persian? I'm not sure. The way she says Paulo could even be Italian. She moves effortlessly from exotic inflection to exotic inflection, humbling me in her worldliness. "Yes, I did," I answer quickly, professionally. "But you're not a nomad like Paulo, right?" I'm shocked that she knows that Paulo is a nomad. He usually doesn't advertise being from the national chapter of the Dead Mariachis Motorcycle Club. It's bad for business for people to know you're in management. It brings unwanted attention. As politely as I can, I smile, but my entire head is buzzing. I try to make eye contact, but she's still smirking, which makes my heart flutter and forces my eyes downwards. I see her hands fidgeting in her lap. She has long fingers and talon-like nails. She catches me staring at them and tucks them into her robe. "No, ma'am, I'm just a grunt from the Etobicoke chapter. But I do security work, and I've been doing it for about 10 years now." "Call me Grace, please." By offering me the small dignity of using her name, she proves that she's in control here. "Have you done any bodyguarding in the past?" "I do a lot of bodyguarding, actually, mostly for the nomads, when they're having meetings, but I work for plenty of businessmen, even a few celebrities." "Am I your first whore?" I'm rattled, caught completely off guard, and she sees it. My jaw swings wide, open like a cattle gate after the herd has already escaped. She beams at the sight and takes more than a little pleasure in my discomfort. "Actually, yes, you're my first professional woman," I say rather more calmly and succinctly than I expected. Her robes slip off her shoulder, revealing an elegant neck and the top of her bosom. I'm trying to remain professional, but I can't resist taking a peek at her. I look at her bosom and at the crevice between her breasts, and my hands feel numb. I follow the contour of her collar, bone towards her neck, steal a glimpse of her lips and catch the sight of her gaze and realize that she has been watching my indiscretion. Her eyes are an ocean of sapphire, outlined in emerald. They're furious, and I cannot look away from them. Something happens to me. I'm caught in this moment. Tingling with love and warmth, I lose my mind, and I drift through a series of memories like they are a slideshow. I'm not in control of it, though. It feels like someone is tumbling through a filing cabinet inside of my head. I'm 15 years old, sitting naked on my bed with a girl I have admired for years. She covers herself instinctually, but I know she wants me to see her. My heart races, and weightlessly, I ask if I can touch her. A smile explodes across her face, like a torch burning through a black moon night, and she uncovers her body for me. I'm shivering with anticipation as I wait for her to enthusiastically say, "Yeah, Eddie, of course you can." My thoughts switch, and for some reason, I think about being a starving 10-year-old. My father's gone again, so it's just me and Mom, and I'm so desperate to be normal, to have food in my belly and a clean shirt to wear to school. I'm walking to the bus stop and I see a $100 bill fall out of an elderly woman's pocket. She's hurrying, trying to catch the bus that's coming, and she has no idea that she's lost her money. I could keep the bill. I know it. I could buy something good to eat and a new shirt, but I see her faded fake fur coat and torn nylons, and I don't even consider keeping the cash. So I run. I run as fast as I possibly can. She's already on the bus when I catch up, and I have to beg the driver to open the door and let me in. I give the woman her money, and she's so happy that she begins to cry. She goes into her purse for a reward, but I tell her no, and I leave before she can give me anything. But there's a darker memory as well. I'm in a basement in Quebec with just a table lamp to light the room. I can smell iron and crimson and the cavernous sound of liquid dripping on a cement floor. My friend Caleb is with me. We work together a lot, and we're standing in front of a man who is tied to a chair. His kneecaps are gone. The tendons in his ankles have been cut with a razor, and his face is a mound of swollen purple flesh. Caleb took his kneecaps, but I did the rest. Now, the man is looking up at me, sniveling, telling me he has a daughter, begging me to let him see her again, but knowing full well that I do not care and am going to kill him anyways. God, why am I thinking about all this right now? The moment passes and I feel the room's pleasantly humid air once again. Grace slips her robe back onto her shoulder and her smile changes from seductive to content. She looks like she's finished a satisfying meal with an old friend. "Come with me," she commands. I follow her out of the sparsely decorated living room into the hallway, which is deep brown hardwood floors and its burgundy walls. The place is clean and just classy enough to be a single-client whorehouse in an apartment above a strip mall. She walks like a goddess, swinging pendulum hips to an unknown rhythm as if somewhere, far away, a drum beats to her steps. She looks over her shoulder as I'm thinking about the drums and giggles because she knows I'm watching her. At the end of the hallway are 3 doors. The first is fully open. Inside is a clean but uninspired bathroom. The second door is ajar. Through it, I can see a purple shade carpet, deep red walls, and mirrors everywhere. The mirrors reflect a giant bed with tall headboards and black silk sheets. Grace ignores the first 2 rooms and gestures to the third door, which is closed. "This is you." It's not much, but there's a comfy place to sit. I don't mind if you read something while you wait, but I'd prefer if you don't once my clients arrive. You can hear everything from in here, I promise. I blush, no doubt. You should take off your cut, just in case. I reach up and feel the leather vest draped over my shoulders. I'd forgotten about it. It's black and heavy and weighted with thick cotton patches in the red and black horror show lettering that lets the whole world know that I am a member of the Dead Mariachis Motorcycle Club. I can't take it off unless I can secure it somewhere. She tosses something small in my direction. It jingles and flutters through the air until it reaches my open palm. Keys. I have another set, to be fair, but if your ray goes missing, then you'll know I'm to blame. And I promise you, Eddie, I know better than to fuck with a man's cut. I nod, slowly. A stillness comes between us, and Grace and I are silent for too long. It becomes awkward, I have no idea what to say to her, how to break through the tension, but she finally provides me with the mercy of breaking the silence and once again proves that she's in control. Paulo did talk to you about what happens here, right? He said things get pretty rough, I answer. Rough. She considers the word, then dismisses it. Rough isn't exactly right. Lots of guys like it rough, and there are plenty of girls out there who can handle it rough. I'm not a dominatrix, or a sub, or something else that's healthy but just happens to be out of the mainstream. I handle things that other girls can't. My clients have tastes that are not acceptable. They simply aren't. In some ways, I'm like a treatment for them. I'm therapy. Something awful grows in the pit of my stomach. Something black. I want to tell her that I understand, but I can only imagine a pathetic little nod. I have 3 clients today, and I use the same safe word for all of them. Your English is good. I've only got to use it once since I started working out of this apartment, and everything stopped immediately. I growl. That's good. Sure, she rolls her eyes at my attempt to be tough. I've been doing this a long time, honey. I'm not worried about my clients. Not really. She claps her hands together and laughs nervously. But like I said, things have gotten out of hand in the past. If that happens again, I have a sort of alarm. It sounds like a whistle, not like a sports whistle, more like something blowing through the trees. You'll recognize it when you hear it, and if you do, that's when I need you, sugar. Don't worry about that, ma'am. Grace, I hear a whistle, and I'll be right in. If that happens, whatever you see when you come in, Eddy, just break it up and get the guy out of here. These are still my clients, after all. This time, my knot is firmer, but feels as tough, as it holds no weight behind it. I'll always use the safe word first, she says, to try and get everything to stop. And if it doesn't, I'll move on to the alarm. If you don't hear the alarm, just sit back and relax as best you can. I've got everything under control. She smiles again, then turns and disappears down the hallway. I watch her leave. Her scent lingers, and I feel empty as soon as she is gone. My room is plain, the walls have no personality, and the furniture is dilapidated. There's a couch and a coffee table and a few copies of Time magazine scattered about it, but otherwise it's barren. There's a light coming in through the window, but I can't see out of it because except for a small corner, the window has been frosted over. I plop down on the couch and feel my cut rise and touch my jowls. It reminds me of what Grace said about taking it off in case something gets wild. She's right. Roughing up some John for hurting a girl is a reasonable enough thing to do, but if you throw a motorcycle club rocker into the mix, then cops treat the situation very differently. All of a sudden, I'm a pimp running a human trafficking ring and intimidating witnesses. I neatly fold up my vest and place it down on the coffee table. Our rocker, which is a skeleton wearing a mariachi outfit and riding a motorcycle, faces upwards. Above and below the Dead Mariachi, on a red background and in black horror show lettering, are our club name and territory. As time goes by, and our cuts become more and more road-worn, the red background sometimes begins to fade. If you have your cut long enough, all of the red turns pink, and that's why we call our older members pinkies. It's an honor to be a pinky. It means you put in the work and the time towards building the club into what it is. When I was in high school, I read about the Mande people of West Africa. The Mande keep their history through entertainers called griots. Griots sing songs, tell jokes, and recite poems about the struggles and triumphs of the Mande, and they have the histories of the entire families memorized. Pinkies are our griots. We can't write anything down because the police are always trying to link us to some atrocity, or claim that the entire club is part of a vast criminal conspiracy. So we don't keep notes, we keep pinkies. There have been a few books written about the Dead Mariachis, but we didn't write them. They were authored by journalists with an axe to grind or by the few cops who tried to infiltrate us. You won't find our real stories in a book. They're told through crass jokes and dirty limericks, or around poker tables covered in blue smoke that stinks like a skunk walking through a meadow. In those settings, a pinky might tell you about how the club got its name when a founding member, who was filling in for a bass player at a concert, OD'd backstage and had to be revived by the guitarist from some Spanish Harlem band who proclaimed afterwards, "Damn, man! You were one dead mariachi." Maybe they'll tell you about one of the big runs that happened in the 70s, the wild ones where thousands of members showed up and they took over an entire town for 3 days and everything ended when the military showed up with tanks. The grimiest stories come from the 90s, during the war between us and the scumfucks MC out of Quebec. If you're really close to a pinky, they might tell you about that time, about the blood and the bones and the gun smoke of it all. My father was a dead mariachi. He was the funniest bastard I've ever met. He told the best stories and he knew the entire history of the club. He always had great advice on how to ride, how to fix my bike. Yes, he darted in and out of my life as a kid, peppering me with love and disappointment. But as I got older, I understood more about who he was. He was a vagabond, a misanthrope, a traveler. He yearned for adventure and chaos in a way that most people will never understand. You have to be a certain type of man to be an outlaw biker, and my father was an outlaw through and through. I lost him a few years back, but he lived long enough to see me get my patch. When the old man's electric guide went down outside Gravenhurst, his rocker was pastel pink, and I know that he loved that it was. I realize that I've been staring at my cut thinking of my father for 10 minutes now. The top corner of my rocker, on the patch that says Dead Mariachis, is starting to fade. So far, my life feels like one long ride with no particular destination in mind, and I don't feel like I've gotten very far. I'm not ready to be a pinky yet. Grace was right. I can hear everything in this room. I listen to her running water in the kitchen and gliding across the living room like a poltergeist. I can almost feel when she's in the apartment. Her smell and the thought of her skin won't leave me. The tickle at the back of my neck causes the fine hairs there to stand at attention. I keep thinking about the way she looked at me downstairs. It feels like she was searching me, like she reached into a place that I thought was buried. It feels like a violation, and I know I'm jittery and disquieted, like a little kid who's been spooked too many times on Halloween's and needs to get home to see his dog. I'm lost in that thought spiral of doubt and fear and shame when 3 quick knocks echo through the apartment. First client has arrived. Grace answers the door, and immediately I notice that she has a different demeanor. Her voice is sing-song, and her register is high. It is completely different from the way she spoke to me. The man comes into the apartment and begins ordering Grace around like he's swinging dick, but his voice sounds like a squeaking rubber duck. My cheeks go flush with anger, and I listen to him boss Grace around. There's a low thump, like he's pushed her into the wall, and I realize that my hands are balled into fists and ready to fly. If Grace hadn't been so thorough with her directions about the safe word and the alarm, I would already be there handing this fool an old-fashioned ass-whooping. She was thorough in her directions, though. So I unclench my hands and force myself to calm down. I remind myself that I am a professional, that this is why I'm here, and that is what Grace needs right now. The pair enter the bedroom next to me, and they begin. It is so much worse than I thought it would be. Yes, he's rough with her, but not in the way I expected. There is a vulgarness to what happens that I didn't anticipate. Every moan, every grunt, every act of violence is laced with tender wanting and an avarice for acceptance. He hits her and then tells her that he loves her. I hear the wet gurgling sound that means she's being choked, and then hear him whisper something fatherly into her ear. In the middle of it all, he asks if she loves him, and Grace tells him yes, immediately. The worst part of this scene is not that her client is rough. It's that he wants her to love him for it. They go for the entire hour, And just before he reaches his end, the room becomes silent except for a low whooshing sound. I lean forward in my seat in order to hear better. My knees shake, and the black thing in my stomach gurgles until I'm tasting bile. The whooshing ends, and no new sounds replace it. That makes me anxious. My fingers dance on my knees. I stand, take 2 steps forward towards the door, and recall Grace's speech about the alarm, so I stop. Finally, I hear them start breathing again, almost in unison. The client gets up a few moments later and stumbles around. He gathers his clothes, fumbles his way to the door, and then tumbles into the bathroom. When he's done cleaning up the sex, he beelines to the front door. I creep over to the window and kneel at the spot where the frosting is missing. I look out just in time to see the client leaving. The bastard is wearing a cheap gray suit which matches the unhealthy complexion of his skin. He looks like a skeleton, and he walks like his cartilage is loose. I can't be sure, but as he gets into his car, I think he's crying. I pop out of my room and cross the hallway. Grace's door is partway open. I'm not trying to look, but I can see her in the mirror in a naked heap on the bed. She's glistening with sweat and fluids, and she coils into the fetal position as I approach. Despite what I've just heard, and maybe a little bit because of it, when I see her, a river of blood pumps into my groin, and I grow without meaning to. I feel deeply ashamed of how my body reacts to her sight, and I look away as I knock. Grace, you okay in there? Go away, Eddy. Come get you if I need you. Sorry, Grace. I start walking away, but before I've finished my first step, I hear her call out, Wait, could you clean up the bathroom for me? Just grab the towels he used and shove them into a bag for now. Sure, Grace. Anything you need. I'm nodding, even though I know she can't see me. If you want, I can change the sheets on the bed, too. No, Eddy. Sheets won't need to be changed. Go away now, please. I do what I'm told. The next client is the same. He's a bottom dweller. He wears a plain black t-shirt and cargo shorts. His skin is oily, and he looks like he just crawled out from his mother's basement. Unlike the first guy, who thought he was Marlon Brando in the Wild Bunch, this fellow is a wimp. He whines, complains about everything in the apartment, talks about how terrible his job is, and then out of nowhere screams at Grace like he's a child having a temper tantrum. After he shouted at her, he falls to his knees and tells Grace he is sorry over and over again and begs her not to be angry with him. As the encounter goes on, he gets more and more vicious, though, and the screaming and apologizing becomes more frequent. I know he's a grown man, but the way he speaks reminds me of a 13-year-old. Towards the end of everything, the headboards in the bed begin to slam in the wall in an awkward bump, 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 bump rhythm. He's like an uncoordinated walrus in there, but at least he doesn't last the entire hour, which is a blessing. Just before he finishes, the same strange whooshing sound happens, and then silence. When it's over, I sneak into the bathroom and tidy up. I'm careful not to look into Grace's room this time, but I can hear her inside, moaning softly in a way that sounds both harmed and satisfied. It takes her 20 minutes before she's able to come to her room and amble down the hallway towards the bathroom. She holds the wall the entire time, and she makes her way to the shower. She did the same thing last time. While she's cleaning up, I distract myself with an article about Syria, which I'm finding out has a rich cultural history that has been marred by decades of conflict. I'm so engrossed in the article that I don't hear her finish showering, nor approaching the door. Come on in. She's half wet, beautiful, and somehow more radiant than when I first saw her this morning. Her cheeks are pleasantly flush, and her lips seem fuller. How you holding up? Me? I'm dumbfounded that she would ask. I'm fine, girl. How are you doing? A very coy and knowing smile answers first. I told you, big guy, I've been doing this a long time. I got everything under control. You really doing okay though, Eddy? You can tell me if you're not. I think about it, and in truth, I feel fragile. The first 2 sessions have been miserable affairs, filled with wretchedness, but I'm a professional, which is what I think Grace needs right now, so I lie to her. Yeah, I'm holding up. You were right about these clients being more than just rough, though. I expected I was going to hear you take a beating, but the shit these guys want from you. Yeah, it's different, isn't it? I want you to love them for it. Yeah, they do. They know you're a hooker, right? She snorts out a laugh, and it's the most charming thing I've ever heard. They forget, and that's why they pay me so goddamn much. Well, they must be paying you a shit ton, darling, because I ain't cheap, and you're the one paying me. And you're not barely putting a dent in my pocketbook, baby. She folds her arms, careful to keep her hands concealed in the crook of her elbow, then leans against the door, casual-like. Listen, this last client, I wanted to give you a heads up. He's the one I had to use the safe word with. Like I said, everything went fine, but still, I don't fully trust myself around him. That would be why I'm here on this particular day, then. Yeah. Usually Paulo sends some hang-around or prospect to wait outside, and if I call them, they come up. But I wanted someone professional to be nearby in case I needed them today. I nod, and she nods, and she offers me a beer, which I decline. Maybe after, I offer. I'll take you up on that, handsome, she says playfully, but sardonically. Because, deep down, in the only place that really matters, both of us know that when today is over, we won't be sharing a beer. I can feel a torch in my chest, and I know already that this woman is going to be a part of me forever. But any lust that existed between us died as soon as that first rubber duck sounding motherfucker opened his mouth and the realities of this gig came crashing down. The third client's late, and he's drunk when he arrives. He says something slurry and leans too hard against the wall as he comes in. Grace asks if he wants to reschedule. He slides up the wall until he's standing, steps towards her, and in a voice seething with anger, he says, "No, Melody, I don't want to fucking reschedule." Melody? He says the name with so much venom. In the same sing-song voice she used with the other clients, Grace affirms that she's okay to continue and leads the client down the hallway. She prattles on the entire time, but I think I hear something rickety below her happy cadence. Fear. When they reach the end of the hallway, the client asks to take a piss. Sweetly, Grace says she'll meet him inside the bedroom, then leaves him alone in the hallway. He's very loud as he walks back down the hall and into the bathroom. As soon as he's there, it sounds like someone has turned on a garden hose, and the steady stream of liquid hitting the porcelain is joined by an enormous groan. Whoever he is, he's an animal. Without washing his hands, the man leaves the bathroom, but he doesn't go to Grace's room. Instead, he stands in front of my door and breathes. I can smell bourbon and BO from the couch. I stare at the door, waiting, and except for the sound of air passing through his nostrils, he's silent. He knows that I'm in here. He's listening to me, and I'm sure of it. The door handle begins to turn. I stand up and reach for the brass knuckles in my pocket. I'm ready for whatever hell comes through that door. "Martin," Grace beckons. "I'm in the other room, silly." The handle goes back to where it belongs. Martin takes a deep breath and exhales slowly. He sounds like a bull that's been set to rut, and I realize that's exactly what he is. A beast taking survey of the field he has been in before he picks a heifer to mount. He walks over to Grace's room, slams the door shut, and they start. When I was a kid, if my father wasn't around, my mother would come home drunk and yell at me. No matter when I was in the house or where I was, when she burst through the door, that's where I would freeze. It didn't matter if I was making a snack in the kitchen, trying to get to the bathroom before I pissed my pants, or jumping on the couch in the living room. Wherever I was, that's where I'd stand, stone still, and let her berate me until she ran out of steam. I always wanted to hit her in those moments, but I never did, because I was a child and I was scared of her. She'd scream into my face and tell me about how wonderful her life had been before she had me. She'd tell me that she had been beautiful and sexy and clean, and that it had all been taken away from her by her miserable child. Then, in the same breath, she would tell me that she loved me and that she'd do anything for me. She'd hug me and kiss me and apologize for what she'd say. "I'm so sorry, my love. I just needed to vent." And then, "Because your father left me alone to raise you, and you don't even realize how good you have it in your nasty little life." That's how Martin yells at Grace. Like he believes she's ruined his life, that he wants her to know it, but still needs her to love him afterwards. Things inside the room kept getting worse. Something is knocked over and broken. I think the windows get shattered. I hear shoving, slapping, and again the wet gurgling that only comes from deep choking. It seems like a horrible scene, but the worst part is not the violence, it's the way he says melody. Whenever he calls Grace by that name, it's like his mouth is filled with honey and rusted nails, like Melanie is warm bread covered in anthrax. He knows Melody. He loves her. He wants her to suffer. With the previous clients, things reached a plateau, then ended. But with Martin, they keep escalating. He gets louder, rougher, more degrading, more vitriolic. I keep looking at my watch. 20 minutes go by, then a half an hour, but the encounter has yet to reach a crescendo. Twice I step towards the door, realize I haven't heard the alarm, remember that Grace has everything under control, and stop myself. It takes all of my willpower not to rush in there. He keeps calling her Melody, though, and every time he uses the name, I hate him a little bit more. Finally, abruptly, the whooshing sound begins. I'm so grateful to hear it because I know that means the end is near. But unlike with the other two clients, this time the whooshing sound goes on. I think it's reaching a peak, that it's about to suddenly cut out, but instead it builds, becoming louder and increasing in pitch. "Your English is good." I snap out of my hate-filled daze and spring to my feet. This bastard has 2 seconds to comply or I am flying. The whooshing continues. "Your English is good." I throw open my bedroom door and storm into the hallway. My skin is crawling with electricity and fire. I feel anguish and fury in my chest, and my fists are loaded weapons. The whooshing finally reaches its limits, and then I hear the alarm begin. Just as Grace said it would be. It's not like a referee's whistle. The alarm is high-pitched with low undertones, like wind blowing through a small hole in a hollowed-out tree. Everything slows down as I enter the room. The first thing I see are Martin's eyes. They're white and wild, and rolled back into his head. I see the thing in his mouth next. It's a great writhing tentacle that pulses and throbs. The snake-like appendage is cadaverously gray and moist. The tentacle takes up Martin's entire mouth and forces his jaw open so wide that he is seeping pink foam. Smaller tendrils have embedded themselves in Martin's ears, in the back of his skull, and his cheeks, his neck, his shoulders, and are wiggling their way through holes that have been opened throughout his body. There is one that is cut through his chest, impregnating Martin's heart, and another going through his side and into his stomach. The biggest one is pumping in and out of his rectum. It gyrates and thrashes and sends spurts of blood onto the sheets. All of the tendrils and tentacles are coming from Grace's orifices. I can't understand what I'm seeing. This feels alien and filthy. All of a sudden, I realize that nothing in the room has been disturbed, despite the fact that I heard crashing and things breaking earlier. Now, aside from what's happening on the bed, everything seems in order. Even the window's fine. I can still hear the alarm, though. I look around the room, searching for where it's coming from. Then look down and see Grace's panic-stricken eyes staring at me, and that's when I realize the alarm is coming from her. I short circuit. I can't move. I watch the slithering tentacles moving inside of Grace's mouth. There are dozens of them in there. They're coming from her nose, from her ears, from other places lower down in the body. Somehow, above the alarm, I hear Grace cry out, "Help me!" Instinctually, I jump onto the bed, wrap my arms around Martin's formidable body, and pull him away. We fall to the floor together. The tendrils pop off his skin, making popping sounds as they do, but the big ones in his mouth and rectum don't budge. I grab the tentacle in his mouth next. It is burning hot, and it pulses in my hand. It takes me 2 tries to rip it out of Martin's mouth, and when it comes out, it falls to the floor like a dead snake, then slithers back into Grace's throat as she slurps it up like a spaghetti noodle. "Get it out, Eddy!" she screams. The other one, "Oh God, get it out!" The worm-like tentacle in Martin's ass is twice as thick as the one in his mouth had been. It takes both of my hands to wrangle it out, and my boot on Martin's back to steady myself enough to tear it out of that bastard's body. Blood spews onto the front of my t-shirt, and I can feel its tomato soup warmness all over me. Grace screams like she has learned about the death of her child, and I have a limp-bodied Martin by the throat and am about to murder him when I hear her yell, "Stop!" So I stop. I breathe. I breathe deep. I count to 4 as I breathe in, hold my breath for 4, and count to 4 as I breathe out again. I breathe, and I hold my fist in the air, and I wait for Grace's command. "You gotta get him out of here, Eddy. He can't stay in this apartment," she whimpers. Without another word, I scoop up Martin, fireman carry him into the living room, and plop him down on the couch. Then I go back to the bedroom, gather his clothes. Grace says nothing to me while I'm in there, just snivels and shakes. As I'm leaving, I see that some of the tendrils are still sticking out of her body. The sight should fill me with horror, but I feel nothing but compassion for her. Martin is pale, gray, and yellow in all the wrong spots. Even though he's a big guy, he seems like a sack of bones with no meat on top of them. Like something gnawed away at his muscles while it was burrowed underneath his skin. It takes me a few minutes to dress him. His pants are a bitch to get on, and just as I'm putting his arms into his coat sleeve, Martin regains consciousness. The bastard scurries backwards from me, like he has seen an ogre sitting in the shadows beneath a bridge. "Who the fuck are you?" "I'm Grace's bodyguard, asshole. Calm down." I know she had someone in that fucking room. He's so indignant and self-righteous. My face catches fire, and I'm on top of him, looming over him, ready to break something that can't never be fixed. "You fucking scum," I scream. "You listen to me, goddammit. I know what you did to her, but I'm gonna rip your guts out, you worm, you nothing, you..." "I didn't do anything to her, man." He has both hands up and is cowering. "Where's Melody?" The anthrax has been scraped off the bread. The venom is all gone. The way he says Melody now sounds like a whimper. Did I hurt her? Oh God. Did I hurt Melody? Melody? I see a field of white stars. "I'm gonna put you in a hole, bitch." I have my hands around his neck, but before I can squeeze, I smell Grace walk into the room. "Get off him, Eddy." I turn, just enough to look over my shoulder. Grace is standing in the hallway entrance, wearing that luxurious robe of hers, silk glistening while she fixes her messy hair with those long, talon-like fingers of hers. They look dry and scaly in this light. I said get off my client. I step away from the bastard, but stare into his eyes as I do. "Melody's fine, Martin. You and I got interrupted. I'm sorry about that, but everything's all right. I'm free in 2 weeks at the usual time. Message me next Friday and we'll confirm." Martin rolls off the couch and sprints away while nodding. He's out of the apartment and gone before the front door closes. I can't look at her this time. It's too hard. What just happened? Don't you worry about that. I'm fine. That's all you get paid to worry about. What was he doing to you? She scoffs. He wasn't doing anything to me. What happens in that room is between my clients and I, and it is always me doing something to them. I think about the scene, about the tendrils joining Martin and Grace's bodies. I heard you say the safe word. Yeah, I bet you heard a lot of things. My guts ring out like a washcloth, and I shoot up to my feet like a degenerate. I push past Grace and storm down the hallway until I'm in her bedroom. Except for a few spots of blood and some ruffles in the sheet, the place is completely clean. It's like nothing has happened here. Then I feel her looking at me in the hallways, side-eyed and livid. I want an explanation, I say. Another scoff. You don't get an explanation, Eddy. I don't owe you one. I appreciate your help, that you came when I needed you. Really, I do, but I don't owe you a goddamn thing. What about him? You just gonna let him walk away from that and come back next week? Yeah, and if he doesn't call me on Friday, I'm gonna call him. The black thing in my stomach turns. Why? For Melody. Who the fuck is Melody? She shakes her head and leans against the door frame. I don't know, but I know she's going to be safe tonight and tomorrow night. It'll be 2 weeks, easy, where she'll get to live her life without Martin bothering her. And just as he starts feeling itchy about Melody again, starts looking at her strangely and thinking about all the horrible things he wants to do to her, he'll remember the total ecstasy he experienced here tonight, and he'll come running back to me. Because I'm better than whatever horribleness he thinks he can get from Melody, and he knows I'll never let him come here again if he hurts her. What were you doing to him? Taking away the bad. And Martin? He has a lot of bad to take. I get carried away around him. That's why I needed you, Eddy, to keep me honest about how much I was taking. I would have sucked him dry if you weren't here. What are you? I regret the question as soon as I ask it. What are you, Eddy? Grace slinks away to the bathroom, and a moment later, water is pouring out of the shower head. I go back into my room and pick up my cut from the coffee table. It suddenly feels heavy, but in the good way that something expensive is. I look at the faded corners of my top rocker beside the D in Dead Mariachis and stare at it for a long time. When the door to the bathroom opens and Grace steps in the hallway, I turn to look at her. She's dripping wet, covered in a towel, and looks like a goddess. Do you want me to clean the bathroom? I ask. She smiles. Sure. Thanks, Eddy. I change the sheets on the bed, too. When I go back into the living room, I see her waiting on the couch, fully dressed in jeans and a sweater. She has a red peacoat on and a matching raspberry beret. She looks chic. I really do appreciate your help tonight, Eddy. Thank you, I mumble. Same time 2 weeks from now? I'm graced with another smile. If you're up for it, I could even use your help tomorrow. I'm compelled to nod in agreement. She glides over to me, swinging from side to side as he moves, and with her taloned fingers, she slips a fresh $100 bill into the front pocket. None of us are always good, Eddy. But you're a better person than you give yourself credit for being. The past is only ever a part of who we are. It's never the entire story. Then she stands on her tippy toes and places her warm lips on my cheek. With a tiny suckling, she kisses me. You should buy something nice for yourself, Eddy. Like a new shirt. The one you're wearing has blood all over it, man. I laugh, and we walk out of the apartment together. We don't get that beer, but she hugs me as she gets into her Mercedes and waves as she drives off. My Harley-Davidson Road Glide is in the back parking lot, underneath a streetlight and surrounded by darkness. I put on my helmet as I cross the lot, then I mount her and hit the ignition. She comes alive, purring beneath me, waiting for me to tell her what to do. I take a minute to look at my cut one last time, to embrace the lightening of its patches, and place it on my body and head for the open road. Maybe Grace is right. Our history isn't all that we are, but it does give us some good stories to tell. And that's something, isn't it? Thanks for joining me. I'm Colt Skinner.